Almost all films use narration, point of view, and knowledge gaps in order to tell their story. And by narration, what is meant is the broad method of how a film tells its story. All films use narration, and it can range from restricted, in the example of Chinatown, where the audience only knows what the main character, Jake Gittes, knows, to extremely unrestricted in the case of Paths of Glory, where we're let in on many characters' motivations and intentions. All methods can be effective if a film uses their structure properly in a manner that attempts to achieve its desired goal. Rosemary's Baby uses restricted point of view for the purposes of constructing effective character revelations, as well as putting the audience in Rosemary's paranoid mindset. The narrational structure of the film restricts its range of knowledge to one central character, Rosemary. She is the film's means of focalization. Only through her experience is the audience given knowledge about the surrounding narrative. We learn information when Rosemary does. There are countless gaps in our knowledge that are filled in only through her newly gained awareness. Rosemary's experience is almost one and the same with the audience's. The film is structured around Rosemary's perspective, creating an intimately constricting, paranoid, and mysterious experience for the viewer. This form of narration is where the film's suspense and horror arise. The purpose is to form the plot around our protagonists so we learn through their experience. The audience is only aware of what occurs within her point of view, which amplifies the signal of threat when suspicions about other characters arise.
I didn't want to miss baby night. And a couple
While
of my
I was
nails were
out?
ragged, and it was kind of fun in a necrophile sort of way.
The restriction and limited range of knowledge create a strong bond between the audience and Rosemary. We sympathize with her because, in a way, we are essentially in her position. There is never a time in the film where she is feeling an emotion revolving around knowledge that the audience does not also feel. The character of Rosemary, however, is not very complex or fleshed out. She has her traits, she's quaint, she's timid and curious, but she's not a terribly interesting character. What makes the audience identify with her, however, is the fact that she acts in a realistic, understandable manner. She's not a naive character, she's suspicious of the odd occurrences around her, which makes it so much more satisfying when she, and the audience, learn information that confirms the reality of these suspicions. Rosemary acts in a way that the audience would react if put in her situation. Her character sacrifices complexity and intrigue for identification with the audience. We understand Rosemary's perspective partly because she's the only character whose motivations and emotions are clear to us. This, in turn, brings everyone else's motivations and emotions into question. We don't trust other characters like we trust Rosemary. A good example of this is the scene where Rosemary tells Guy that she's going to see Dr. Hill.
Guy,
Yeah.
I'm going to Dr. Hill Monday morning.
Rosemary, you got the best doctor in New York. You know who Dr. Hill is? He's a Charlie Nobody. That's who he is. Well, we'll have to pay Saperstein. We'll have to pay Hill. Well, it's out of the question.
I just want to go to Dr. Hill and get a second opinion.
I won't let you do it, Rome. I mean, because it's not fair to Saperstein.
Not fair to... What are you talking about? What's fair to me?
If you want a second opinion, you tell Saperstein and let him decide.
No, I want Dr. Hill.
We understand why she wants to get a second opinion from her original doctor, because we know that she has been in constant pain and that Dr. Saperstein has continually told her that it will go away. When Guy yells at her and tells her that she can't go because it's not fair to Saperstein, his motivation suddenly becomes suspicious. The audience has no knowledge of Guy's motivations because the film restricts them from us. This choice of narration makes us sympathize with Rosemary and question Guy, because her perspective is shown while his is withheld. The limited range of knowledge pays off tenfold in scenes where Rosemary learns new information about the surrounding story. A great example of this payoff is the scene where Rosemary discovers that the name Stephen Marcato is an anagram for Roman Castevet. This is an extremely effective and spine-tingling moment as we are learning new information that confirms some of Rosemary's suspicions about her surroundings. But there's more. This revelation not only confirms these suspicions of Roman being involved in witchcraft, but also indicates that he was involved in Hutch's quick decline in health and eventual death. The effectiveness of this revelation works only in the context of restricted narration. Without a gap in the audience's knowledge, this moment would have been far less effective. Just imagine if we had discovered the anagram along with Hutch 30 minutes ago. Part of the film's intriguing nature comes from the various knowledge gaps created for the audience. We get to experience the rewarding reveal and confusion of these gaps along with our protagonist. The film contains a few suppressed gaps, which according to David Bordwell, are knowledge gaps that the film does not draw attention to. There is an ingenious suppressed gap in the third act of the film that puts our heroine into immediate danger. This gap is exposed during a scene in which Rosemary is anxiously awaiting to be seen by Dr. Saperstein. At this point in the film, we view him in good standing as Rosemary has recently disclosed to him the anagram of Stephen Mercado, and he has this to say.
Absolutely fantastic. What'd you say the name was? Machado?
Mercado.
Fantastic. I think he told me once his father was a coffee importer.
He told Guy he was a
I
producer.
understand how disturbed you must be to have him for a close neighbor.
I don't want anything more to do with
Absolutely.
him. Or Minnie. I can't take even the slightest chance where the baby's safety is
Absolutely.
concerned.
Any mother'd feel the same way.
The audience now has some faith in him. Rosemary flees to his office after throwing out her necklace with the foul-smelling tannis root inside and uncovering further incriminating evidence against Guy.
That smells nice. What is it?
Oh, it's called Detrima.
Well, it's a big improvement on your regular, if you don't mind my saying.
That wasn't a perfume. That was a good luck charm. I threw it away.
Good. Maybe the doctor will follow your example.
This one line of dialogue signals that Rosemary is in immediate danger, and the mood of the scene rapidly switches from docile to apprehensive. What would the film look like if the narration was unrestricted? This is an interesting question as the film's tension and intrigue relies on limited knowledge. Unrestricted narration would ultimately render the mysterious and paranoid atmosphere of Rosemary's Baby ineffective. Most of its tension comes from character revelations, which are in turn revelations for the audience as well. If the audience was let in on the fact that Guy made a deal with Minnie and Roman to impregnate Rosemary with the spawn of Satan, then the film would be tensionless. Or what if the structure allowed us to view Roman and Minnie planning every step of the way? Or if the audience was told from the beginning that they were witches, what would the stakes of the film be after that information is revealed? There would be no horrifying revelations to the audience. All that the audience would be left to wonder for the entire rest of the film is whether or not Rosemary would find out. This could create tension if she was naively unsuspecting of characters' motivations throughout the film, but she is not. This is also partly due to the fact that she is mainly a vessel for the audience to experience her surrounding conspiracy and less of a fully realized character. It would have to be an entirely different film in terms of atmosphere and narrative revelation, and not necessarily for the better. The restricted narration and limited range of knowledge are what makes this an extremely effective horror and mystery film. It would be dampened by an unrestricted or semi-restrictive point of view. Rosemary's Baby is a film that utilizes its restricted point of view structure to its fullest potential, which constructs an extremely effective horror film that is filled with suspense. It creates a looming, paranoid atmosphere that is shared amongst the audience and its main character. This is due to the shared experiences between viewer and character, which is made possible by restricted narration. The structure makes the film intriguing as we are anxiously awaiting further knowledge about the narrative, which is only granted to us through Rosemary's experience. An alternative narrational structure would render most of the suspense, atmosphere, and tension almost completely ineffective. Polanski's choice of narration is the cornerstone of what makes this film a horror classic.